Hello everyone and welcome to this very short tutorial on how we can drag and drop in Unity. So essentially what we're going to be making is the ability to take an object and place our mouse anywhere on that object and drag the object to a new position while we keep holding down the mouse button. So let's jump into Unity and see how we can do just that. So here I have a blank Unity project. This is a Unity 2D project, but the essentials are the same. So we will add a new 2D object. Let us just add a square. So we can pretend that this square is maybe a card in some sort of a card game that we want to drag around. So in order to be able to respond to events like mouse events, we would need to add a box collider 2D. Now this places this extra component to the game object, and whenever we manipulate with the object or it listens to certain events, also within the physics world, it uses the box collider 2D. So we will not be able to register a mouse click if we don't have a box collider 2D on the game object. So the next thing we need is a C# script. We can just call this drag. There we go. So we place this particular script onto our game object here. Just need Unity to do something. There we go. Not quite sure what that was, so we will try to drag it in again. There we go. So now this new drag script has been added to this game object. Great. Okay, so let's fire up our new script. There we go. So in this script we have a start, we have an update method. This is all pretty standard. Let's just get rid of this for now. So the first thing is that we want to be able to register whenever the user starts clicking on this object, because that's when we want to start to drag it. So there is a method we can use called mouse. There is, let's take on mouse down. There we go. Private void on mouse down. So this particular method is called whenever the user has pressed the mouse button while hovering over a particular element or collider. In this case, it is our collider. So this particular method should be called whenever we should start dragging. When the mouse is over the object and the user clicks down on the mouse and holds down the mouse button, we want to drag it. So we need to know when we should start to drag and also when we should stop to drag. And we should stop to drag on mouse up. So debug.log and call this stop dragging. So we start when the user holds down the mouse button on this object, and we stop when the user lifts the mouse button again. So let's just save this and we go back into Unity and we test to see whether or not these methods are actually getting called. So we open up the console window, press play, and hopefully when I click here it says start dragging in the console. Awesome. And I can drag around. Of course it's not doing anything else yet. And if I release the mouse button, it says stop dragging. If I clear the console and I press anywhere else on the screen, nothing happens. But if I'm inside this object, it will start drag and stop drag. Great, so now we know that the setup is complete and everything is connected and these methods are getting called. It's always a good thing to do these debug steps along the way, because if you make everything in one go and you test it and nothing's happening, you might have to go back for several minutes or hours of work in order to figure out what you did wrong. So now we know when to start and when to stop dragging. let us re-implement the update method, because in the update method is where we want to do the actual dragging, because this is the one getting called every single frame. So whenever we need something to happen continuously, we usually place it in the update method. So we don't want to drag all the time. We only want to drag when we are actually in the process of dragging something. So in order to keep track of that, we just make a small private bool variable called, we can call it isDragging, and we will initialize it to false as a standard, because we're not dragging anything when we fire up the project. And then we want to see if we are supposed to be dragging something, we should drag the card. So this particular flag needs to be set and unset in this method down here. So on mouse down is where we should start dragging. So we need to set isDragging to true. And down here we need to set isDragging to false, because whenever we release the mouse, we need to stop the dragging process. So whenever we drag something, let's take the example here. So whenever we are dragging something, let's say we want to drag this particular object here, and we press down with the mouse cursor, and we drag the mouse around on different areas of the screen. Now, in the update method, that's getting called every single time we drag along this line. So it's getting called, you know, every step of the way here. And whenever that happens, we want to move the center of our object to where the mouse is on the screen at this particular point in time, so that it will always update its position to follow along with the mouse. So how do we do that? First of all, we need to figure out where the mouse actually is. And whenever we are working with, you know, positions, we are using vectors. So let us get the mouse position vector 2D. And in order to get that, we actually use our camera, and we can call camera.main to get the main camera on the screen. We say screen to world point, which is a method we can call on the camera. If we hover over this method, there we go. We can see that we can go into these documentations if we really want to read about it. And it takes an argument, which is going to be our input.mouse position. So input.mouse position is the current mouse position, but in pixel coordinates. Okay, so this is why we're using this method. So we could actually debug this out if we want to. You can do that as an exercise if you really want to figure it out. But the mouse position is being given to us in pixel coordinates. So this is where, you know, which particular pixel the mouse is currently at. And by asking the camera to convert that pixel position using the screen to world points, we convert it to screen pixels, or from screen pixels to world points, you know, the unity points that we are working in our scene. These, if we go in here, we can see everything here is in points. This is unity points when we're dragging this around. This is not X and Y, it's not represented as pixels, it's represented as points. So that is the conversion that is happening right there. So this one will give us the current mouse position. And from that we subtract the, okay, let's see here, we subtract the position that we are currently on. Okay? And then on the next line we say transform.translate mouse position. Okay, so here we get a vector 2D by figuring out where the, I think, let's try and illustrate it again here. There we go. Okay, so at any particular point, let's make a new one here. Let's say we have the card here, and our mouse is here, we get two things. Like the first thing we get is this one. Right there, camera.main.screen to world point, input.mouse position. So this one converts or gets us this location right here. And we subtract it from the current position of our card. And now that will give us a vector that is pointing in the direction that we need to move in. And that is exactly what we do down here. We move the transform in the direction and distance of translation, which is the mouse position that we're calculating right now. So by taking the vector or the position we have here and subtracting the position we have here, the difference between those is going to be the vector representing both a distance that we need to move in order to get to the mouse position. And then we simply move the object to that calculated position. So let us try and take this for a spin and see if it actually works, or if I have just been rambling on about stuff that doesn't work. Okay, and there we go. We can see we can drag the card around, and whenever I stop holding the mouse button down, it releases the card. So there you have it. When you're first starting out in Unity, like stuff like this, dragging something around seems like something that should just be really simple to do, and it is. Like it's not complicated to do, but if you haven't worked with vectors and Unity points and everything, this can seem a little bit confusing. So that's why I think it's a good idea to draw it out when it doesn't really make sense, or if you have a hard time understanding it, because it just makes more sense in order to do it like that. Of course, you can also just put this in some sort of a script, and then you just know whenever you need to move stuff, you can use that one. But I think it really helps to know the methods and know why you're doing it, in case you need to make some changes to it. So this is just a very simple way on dragging stuff around the screen. Now, it's not perfect, because if I start dragging on the middle, it looks smooth, but if I drag from the corner, you can see it kind of jumps to be centered on the screen. And what we see right here is actually this calculation right here, because we are here using the transform.translate. We are moving the card to the exact position our mouse is at, or well, the difference between where we are and where the mouse is. So if the mouse is here, the second I press, it's gonna jump on the first update. It's gonna move the entire object down to where the mouse is. And then when I start to drag it around, everything looks smooth, because the mouse is, right on top of the object we're dragging. So the difference here is not going to be that great. We might be able to debug it out just for fun. Whoops. Let's debug the X position. And the Y position. There we go. Whenever we are changing the mouse position. And then we just have to restart the game. There we go. Whoops. Okay, so here we can see when I hold it in place, it just says 0.0 because we're not moving it. If I start to move it, we can see numbers popping up and changing because it's moving in the direction of the mouse. Now, if I just press it one time here, you can see we start dragging and we have a pretty big difference. You see, it's like, wow, 1 to -1. Whereas if we drag it here, you can see it's operating on 0.02 values. So that is what is happening there. And of course, this is something you can work with if you want to, but in most cases you probably wouldn't mind. This is something I would like to call, yeah, I don't know, it's fidelity issues. Like whenever you're making your game, you make a prototype, you start out like this, and then you can like fine tune it and add all the smoothness in the end. So yeah, this is just a simple example on how you can move an object in Unity. So thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.